So at Google specifically, I feel like at least a third of the work is writing PRDs.
Hi, I'm Henry, and I'm here today with EJ. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it seems like you had quite the ride. You were at MIT, then you joined Google, and then you started your own startup. So you must know a lot about product management.
Well, I've certainly got to see it from a lot of different perspectives. Seeing it at Google, also Internet Microsoft, so the really big companies, down to seeing it at a startup with 2-3 guys working in an apartment. I've kind of gotten to run the gamut. And I think that's definitely helped me have a lot of perspective on what the PM role is like in different settings.
So what would you say is product management?
I'd say product management is really two things. Like the main thing about it is setting the product direction, figuring out what you should build, and how to go about that. But I think the other big part of it is filling in all the gaps that other people aren't doing. So at a big company like Google, maybe you're actually mostly just focused on the product side of it because you have someone else who's doing marketing or someone else who's doing data analytics and all those things. At a smaller startup, you might have to do a lot of those roles yourself as well, maybe even doing some of the engineering stuff yourself. So in addition to just setting the product direction, you kind of have to fill the gaps of doing the things that you don't already have another employee specialized to do.
And when you talk about building a product, how do you think about building a product?
I think you always really want to start with whatever the user problem is. Try to put yourself in their position and try to think what is out there that could exist that doesn't exist today that could make their lives easier for whatever problem you're facing. At Google, for example, was working on Android, specifically Google Now or the Google Assistant is I think what it's called now, and looking at how can we use machine learning or big data in order to do smart things for users. At Laughly, we were working on a comedy app, so like we saw that in the market there wasn't a lot of stuff dedicated to streaming stand-up comedy, and that there was still a demand for it, and we wanted to think how could we bring a product that might fit that niche.
So let's start with Google. What was product management at Google like?
So product management at Google, it can depend a little bit on what product you were working on, but at the products I worked on, which were both Inbox and Google Now, the main thing you had to do was look at your particular area of the product and figure out what the roadmap of that piece should be. So when you're working at Google, if you're working on one of the more mature products, then you don't really own the entire product. You probably own some portion of it. So for example, on Inbox, the part I was most concerned with was the experience of composing it and writing emails. So for example, you might sound like most of what an email app is, but there are other parts, right? There's like reading the emails, there's things like archiving, spam, all those stuff. That's not what I focused on. So I focused on the composing experience. So an example project in there would be Smart Reply. So now if you use Gmail, and this technology has come over from Inbox to Gmail, and you get an email, you might already have some responses generated for you at the bottom, like sounds good or thanks. That's the result of using machine learning over all of Google's emails in order to see what are the ways people typically respond to short emails and coming up with suggestions for that. So that's the type of thing where we figured we could use our data sets in order to make writing emails more efficiently by essentially writing it for you.
And how much of that was leadership driven versus product manager driven?
Well, you could say both. You could say product manager leadership. There was probably a kind of overall leadership push at the time to use AI throughout all of Google's products. And this was just one example of where we thought we could do that. And so in this case, this was like a cross collaboration between not just the Inbox team, but also the wider machine learning groups at Google that weren't dedicated specifically to this product, but can use their technologies to leverage machine learning throughout all of Google's products.
When implementing this new feature, what teams do you mainly work with?
In this case, it was the Gmail/Inbox team itself, but also the machine learning team. So Google is such a big corporation that it's almost like it's multiple different companies. And I guess now that it's Alphabet, it is multiple different companies. But this may have been even pre-Alphabet times. But when you're working across the company, it's almost like you have shared resources that different groups at Google can use. And so you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel in each product area. So the people are doing machine learning for search Maybe that some of that underlying technology can also work in documents or in email or in whatever other Google groups that need such a thing. And so part of being a product manager is learning how to communicate across the organization in order to get the resources you need.
In terms of your work itself, can you give us a general breakdown of how much of your work is writing PRDs, sitting in meetings versus I don't know, what else product managers do?
So at Google specifically, I feel like at least a third of the work is writing PRDs and trying to come up with those specifications. And then another third is things like meetings, just doing the communication across your teams or designers or marketing or different people that are involved in the product lifecycle. And then I think the final third is kind of working hand in hand with the engineers or designers to actually spec out how the product should work, talk through edge cases, sometimes just in real time, going back and forth and trying to figure out, is this a bug? Is this a feature? Does this work well? Is it not? What kind of changes do we need to make on the fly as we're developing it?
I heard this secondhand that part of product management is being able to influence without direct control or power. Is that the case at Google too?
It's definitely the case at Google and basically any product manager job I've had, because you're not the direct manager of any of the people you work with. And even if you're a product manager, then you're a direct manager of those people, but you still need to influence the engineers and the designs and the marketing people who have their own marketing managers and engineering managers. So learning how to work with people that you don't actually have direct control over is super important.
And how do you go about getting their buy-in?
Mostly by working with them from the start to make sure that they understand your thought process and would reasonably come to the same conclusions that you do. So it's less about dictating that you think the product should work like this because you say so, and more about always communicating effectively your reasoning so that everyone's just in agreement on what it should be. It may not be their full-time job to think through what the product should be like, but at the end of the day, after you've done that thinking and presented it, since they're smart people too, they'll probably agree with you if you're on the right track.
From your experience, which team do you feel like has the most pushback?
Different teams for different reasons. I'd say designers often are the ones that you have to push back on because they a lot of times want to just design unconstrained by, say, engineering resources or time, and want to go straight to something ideal, which it's their job to figure out the ideal thing, so there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you have to do something more of an MVP, or sometimes you may have to settle for something less than ideal for other engineering factors or external factors. And so getting designers to back down from what their ultimate goal would be sometimes can be a bit tricky.
And I heard that, at Google, product managers must have some sort of programming background, whereas other companies like Facebook don't require that. Yeah. What are your thoughts behind the value of having a technical degree?
I think it's super valuable, and not all product manager roles will require it. At Google, you don't actually have to write code or anything like that. However, you do have to work directly with engineers, and you want them to respect you. And they'll respect you a lot more if they feel like you understand what their jobs involve doing, understand the difficulties of doing certain aspects of, say, developing a program or working on a new functionality. If they know that you could actually work on this yourself if you had to, they're a lot more likely to respect your opinion when you say things should be done a certain way or try to push them to do something better.
Or those people who are interested in getting into product management, what is the ideal path?
Yeah, if you're in college, the easiest path is if you can get a PM job or internship while you're in college or right out of college. If you don't, then it just becomes a little bit harder because people might try to put you in a box. For example, if you start off working as a software engineer, then you have to convince people that actually you have these product management skills as well. But if you go straight into product management, then you don't have to worry about that. That's obviously not going to be possible for everyone. There's not a ton of entry-level PM jobs out there, but I would definitely say if you can get a PM job right away, that's the best. If you can't, then there's lots of other good ways. If you start off as an engineer or designer in some other discipline, that can be super helpful because it means you're going to be really strong in that compared to other PM candidates. It just means that you have to find other ways to prove that you have those core PM abilities. So whether it's doing side projects, whether it's trying to take up PM type tasks at whatever company you're currently in and be able to demonstrate that and have that shine through on your resume. Those are the things you have to try to hammer on in order to move into the field.
What is the typical career trajectory of a PM? So you start off as like an entry-level PM.
Yeah.
And are there, I guess, different stages?
Yeah, so most companies have some sort of ladder that looks like starting as an entry-level PM, then maybe becoming a senior one, then maybe a PM manager, director, VP, and so on. At most big tech companies, it is the PM leadership all the way up to the top that's setting the direction and the goals of the company. At least that's how it's been at the ones I've worked at. Of course, if you're working at a much more technology-focused product or company that's maybe less productish and more about pure technology, then maybe the engineering people are the ones that are setting that direction more so. But at the companies that I've been, the typical manager, director, VP career ladder is what you'll see.
You were at Google, you ended up leaving. Why?
So I'd say the two most common reasons people leave